Welcome to the largest Ark Civilization experiment. Over 100 Ark players have been split up into 4 unique races, each with their own biomes, creatures, and abilities. The fire fairies of the burning forest, small nimble creatures that can fly and breathe fire, the stony trolls of the swamp that are incredibly tanky, strong, and can grapple to pull themselves around. Khajiit of the desert, a cat-like race that takes reduced fall damage and can climb up great cliffs. Then finally, the possessed. A race of humans that have been tainted from worshipping demons and morphed into what they are today. Players received zero guidance about any of their strengths or abilities, and it'll be up to them to discover how best to rule their nation, build up their fortifications, as well as develop their militaristic powers in order to prove once and for all why they are the greatest nation ever. I would like to welcome you to... If you want to see more of these videos, make sure to subscribe. And also if you want to join these, make sure you're in my Discord using the link in the video description. It all started like every other Ark server playthrough, with each race getting teleported by the admins into their respective biomes. These are the Khajiit, the race of cat people with the ability to climb using their claws and the elegant grace of a cat allowing them to take no fall damage. Spawning in the desert cliffs, a high rocky mountain where not many can get to.
I'm alive! We're alive! He's alive!
The trolls began by punching some trees as well as immediately selecting a leader, Captain Dreadbeard, a veteran in these events, having previously led his team in the Pirate Civilization video. The fairies were teleported into the beautiful burning forest, but with their ability to jump extremely high, glide and breathe fire, they were able to survive and began clearing out some of the dangers in the area, using the nearby rocks for cover so they could not get attacked.
I'm just scared.
And then here we have the possessed, a race of humans that have been tainted by evil forces and morphed into the beings you see today, with large spikes sticking out their shoulders and savage claws out of their hands. Now that each race was successfully in their start locations, the native creatures to each region were incredibly hostile. Vampires in the possessed region began tormenting the poor and naked survivors while they tried to kill it with spears and pickaxes. While the stragglers were getting camped at spawn, one possessed, Mysteriox, had broken off from the rest of the tribe extremely early with ambitions of proving himself to be the strongest, and came across a small hut filled with some loot and armor to immediately give himself the advantage. The Khajiit, having little to no early game fighting potential, had made use of their climbing claws to scale the side of a nearby cliff, where they began to set up camp. The fairies, meanwhile, had begun to hide out on a rock where they would occasionally set each other on fire. Accidentally, of course. And in the desert, the Khajiit were working hard to keep each other alive, even dragging away members that were knocked out before moving on to harvest some creatures and fight off the hostiles.
Jump!
Got him!
I killed him! Go!
The Khajiit were truly working incredibly well as a team, even fighting a boss totem together that had been harassing them. The fairies had since decided that high on the mountains was not the best base location for them, and moved down into the middle of the forest where they felt they were safer. But some creatures were still not leaving them alone.
Careful, there's some stranger dangers that I saw. Oh god, lots of stranger dangers. There's lots of stranger dangers!
There's lots of scary things down there. I don't want to come down. Kitty, jump up.
I'm trying! Oh god, guys! Isn't this dude a passive game?
Though they were able to set up a small foundation to begin crafting up some tools, armor, and equipment, the majority of the possessed tribe had set up shelter on a nearby mountain. But a few members of the race had broken off from the core group, the most notable of which was Mysteriox, who simply wanted to kill off as many of his own race as possible. Not entirely sure why at this point, but that was his goal. The Khajiit ended up having an election where there were multiple candidates, each with their own goals and ambitions.
I will give anyone that wants free food.
I'm gonna make an established military, separate resource gatherers, and have a whole system.
I'm gonna split everyone into teams for gathering, hunting, and base building.
That's basically what I said.
So for me, I'm just gonna give you something very basic, not any of this military stuff. All we need to do is just do a simple setup, get a pair of a certain dino that is easy to breed, and after that just make an army of it and we distribute the people into teams. One team will go hunting, etc., resource building.
But it was finally Satan who was elected to lead the cat people, even endorsed by Chromata, a classic amongst these 100-player videos. Under the rule of Satan, the Khajiit quickly advanced, setting up workstations to begin crafting tools and armors, but they were not as safe as they thought, as little did they know that a world event was about to take place. Death was here, and he had an assault rifle. Death began to mow through the different races, flying, firing, and fighting as they all desperately tried to bowler him. Death was bowled and killed off easily by the Khajiit, while the Possessed with their high melee damage simply slashed through Death with the sword, defeating him to gain his equipment. In the Fairies region, this time Death was cooked to a crisp thanks to their fire breath, and the trolls at this point had set up a treehouse, and even tamed themselves a demon-like creature known as a Chalon. But since every tribe had successfully defeated Death, they now had a competition to compete in. Every tribe would now be competing in a build contest to create the ultimate fortress in order to receive a variety of prizes. The Possessed, having been dealing with Mysteriox for majority of the game thus far, ended up convincing him to stop killing them and instead join them as their leader.
If you guys try to kill me, I'm gonna kill you guys back. Just that saying.
So now under Mysteriox's rule, they began to quickly advance and build up their base. Going for a mountainside castle, the Khajiit were building a monolithic shrine on their cliff, while the fairies went for a cliffside house, and the trolls continued to expand their tree-side mansion. But with that, the time for building came to a close, and with some fantastic looking builds, the Khajiit received a score of 27. Possessed received a grand total of 27.5. The fairies ended with 25.69. And finally, the trolls scored a huge total of 35.69. Smashing out the rest of the races, winning themselves a variety of loot and equipment based on their rankings. But with the end to the build contest, that marked the end of peace. The radiation barriers between each region now fell, and war was looming in the distance. Two trolls, who had been outcast by the rest of the race, ended up traveling all the way to the Khajiit's desert, using their grapple to pull themselves up the mountain, not for war, but to humbly join the Khajiit, who gratefully welcomed them into the tribe.
Hello, I'm here to punch stuff for you guys.
In the center of the map, there is a fortress protected by many different creatures and dangers, and as the borders no longer existed, that castle was now accessible. So one Khajiit, Windy, and two fairies were the first to get to the fortress, and Windy had some difficulty as he desperately tried to escape the hordes by climbing the walls, but that's when the Possessed race all started to arrive. The Possessed took up position on the outskirts of the castle, the Khajiit on a small structure, and the fairies on top of the keep in the center. The Possessed eventually cleared out the final survivors of the other races and were able to use this advantage to loot everything they needed from various drops that had spawned in the area. And throughout this entire siege, the entirety of the troll army had been hiding out at their treetop tower.
Welcome to Not a Podcast.
Welcome to Not a Podcast, episode 4.
Yeah!
As well as the rest of the fairies who were hiding out at their base. But little did they know, an invasion was brewing as Captain Dreadbeard had rallied his fellow trolls and slowly began to make their way into the fire forest, quietly searching for the fairies' stronghold, when they found it and began to descend onto them.
Hello, little fairies.
Control! My mic's so bad, it's gonna make your ears explode!
Hacking and slashing, the trolls with their incredibly high melee slashed through all of the fairies. They stood no chance. It was a massacre. Meanwhile, the Khajiit in their base were simply hanging out, sticking to the relative safety of their cliffside keep. The Possessed had moved into the stronghold found in the center of the map, as was a great place for them to continue gearing up from the respawning loot drops. But the trolls who had traveled from the fairies here charged in, catching the Possessed completely off guard. The trolls, with their stronger equipment that they had pillaged from the fairies and their melee advantage, were able to slaughter the Possessed. Every single one of them. There were barely any survivors left from the fairies and the Possessed. The trolls simply had way too much of an advantage, having been the first tribe to pillage another race's loot. All that remained were the Khajiit, who were finally beginning to move out of their base. But as they began to travel through the deadly lands, due to their distinct disadvantage in equipment, were simply getting slaughtered by the wild creatures. So once they were close to the center stronghold, they desperately needed some more loot and equipment to have any chance of fighting the trolls. But that is exactly the distraction the trolls wanted, as they ran straight in to kill off the remaining Khajiit. There were a few stragglers left behind in each race, forced into hiding to fend for themselves as solitary nomad, leaving the trolls victorious. Thank you for watching and subscribe.